Hello and welcome to another Corpse Treasure. It's a Souls-like game with a unique mechanic where you have a bunch of unique shells that all have different properties. I've been playing it for the past few days and I've really enjoyed that, so I just thought I might share it with you. Like in all Souls-like games, if you die, you lose your currency. In this case it's microplastics, which is very funny. All the enemies respawn and you spawn back at a checkpoint. In this case, it's a moon snail shell. When you die, you also lose your shell, so you really need to find another one. But usually there's one nearby. But it might not be a really good quality one. Now, for the basics of combat, you have a jump attack, which isn't really super useful because it doesn't do a lot of damage. You have a basic light attack combo and a charged heavy attack. You also have shell abilities, which most shells have a unique one, with some of them being shared between each other. Having a shell is really important because the shell abilities are usually some of your most powerful attacks, but using them costs you one of these purple stars. And you gain them back by just attacking the enemies. Another property of shells is that depending on what kind of shell you have, the shell will absorb some of your health damage as shell damage instead. The shell's health bar is in blue. Without a shell you are really squishy, and with some of the chunkier ones like a coconut shell, you can easily tank several hits before you need to heal. Speaking of healing, you have a limited amount that restores once you rest in a moon snail shell. You can also gain some back randomly after killing enemies, as they can sometimes just drop the healing plant. You can sometimes also find a few healing plants just growing in the world, usually after a tougher area. Let's just start off from where I died, so we don't spend forever here. Another thing you can do with your shell is to just block attacks, which will result in you only taking shell damage. Constantly blocking isn't really advisable, as your shell will just break rather quickly. So preferably you still want to dodge, but blocking can come handy in a pickle. And some shells are just better at blocking than others. The one we just picked up now has a skill which allows the next 3 attacks to not deal any damage to our shell once we block. So this is a pretty good blocking shell, I'd say. Shells also have weights in light, medium and heavy. The light shells do not impact the speed of your dodge rolls at all. The medium ones are like medium rolls in Souls games, which means they are still okay and will do the job, but they aren't quite as perfect as the light rolls or the quick rolls. And finally the heavy shells, which replace your dodge completely with a pathetic forward dive, which is really slow and, well, you shouldn't really dodge at all with a heavy shell. However, heavy shells are amazing at blocking, have insane amounts of shell health and good damage absorption. So they can really take a lot of beating before you need to worry about them breaking. Taking a break from speaking about the gameplay for a moment, can we just appreciate how cutesy the game looks? It's really comfy to play, where a lot of the Souls-like games are all doom and gloom. And of course it works well with the game genre, but I just really appreciate that we have something new and original here. And it actually feels really nice and cozy playing this. The music works really well for building that atmosphere as well. Oh, and if I haven't said that already, we have a grappling hook, and the game uses just a little bit of parkour to spice up the gameplay. And as I'm sure you've already noticed, this is not really the beginning of the game. It's like 4 to 5 hours in. I wasn't sure if I like this game, as I usually play these darker and more gloomy games, but I must say it's a really good game, so I wanted to make a video on it. If you'd like to see me cover the entire game, then please let me know. I'd probably be open to doing that. The story is really funny as well. Long story short, we are a small little hermit crab who lived peacefully in his shell, but then a loan shark comes and says that we haven't paid our taxes in a long time, so he will take our shell until we can pay off our debt. And this is how the entire story goes. We are trying to get back our home. Now, of course, the story isn't anything serious or grand like The Witcher or something like that, but, well, it works and I think it's fine. We are currently on our way to the city where we suspect the loan shark went to sell off our shell. So that's where we're heading to investigate that lead. Oh, and of course, like in all good Souls-like games, we can unlock shortcuts just in case we die, so we don't lose as much progress. I prefer this solution over just spamming the checkpoint sites everywhere. I also think the game has a really fine enemy placement. Like in here, we have a basic melee enemy, an elite melee enemy, which you can tell by his glowing purple eyes. It just means he'll have more health and more damage, as well as a few ranged enemies, so we can decide how we want to tackle it. I like to deal with the ranged enemies as soon as possible, if it's possible to reach them. And after you kill an enemy with glowing purple eyes, you'll gain a crystal, which is a special currency you can spend to learn new abilities. However, once they respawn, they will no longer have the glowing eyes and will no longer drop crystals, so you can't farm them. But there are also these crystals in the world, so exploration is rewarded. Speaking of difficulty, I don't think this game is particularly super hard, especially in the Souls-like genre, but you really need to be on your guard at all times, because look how much damage this little simple basic enemy did, and he's not even elite. It's super easy to die once you become distracted for even a second. There are also these huge purple cubes, which I bet you can destroy somehow. I just haven't unlocked a way to do that yet. So I guess the game will also reward backtracking later on, which I'm normally not a huge fan of, but I can't really tell yet, because I'm only like 10 hours into the game. Okay, let's deal with one more of these basic enemies, replace our shell for a better one, and I guess I'll see you once we make it to the city. I guess I might also sprinkle in something cool or interesting. Like this. This is a parry. It is not unlocked by default and you unlock it with the purple crystals. Parry, you need to release your block at the right time, so it's quite a bit different than in other games. Here's another example of how goofy this game is. We need to go fast, so how will we do it? We'll just put on a tennis ball as our shell, and we'll crawl into it and just roll very quickly. Oh, and the dialogue obviously isn't voiced, as it is a smaller scale game. However, some very important main story scenes are actually voiced, and I think the voice acting is quite good. Well, let's just get rolling, and I must say that is very quick. It's hard to control, but yeah, I managed to get it and not fall into the abyss. And with that, we are basically as good as in the city. We can activate our well-deserved checkpoint and head on into the city. And here we are at last, but there will be a lot of cuts as the city has a whole lot of collectibles to grab, as well as a lot of characters to talk to. However, I must say that a lot of the dialogue really isn't that interesting, and after about 10 or 15 of those, I just skipped talking to them, which is a shame, but I think there are people who could enjoy it. Okay, so the most important things. The shark who stole our home is here, somewhere, but the guy doesn't know where. So we'll have to go through every important landmark in this city and just ask around to find out. And this is precisely what we are going to do. Our shell might have been sold to the luxury goods store, the museum, or to the bottom feeders, which is a gutter trash, or maybe to the blacksmith in the worst case scenario. But before we get to any of these places, we found Eric, which is a very sad looking porcupine thingy. And why is it sad? Well, because it hurts anyone who touches it, so it cannot be hugged. And Krill is just such a good boy that he's very persistent on giving the boy a hug. And well, surely enough, we do get hurt after trying to hug him. But when I said that Krill is very persistent, I meant that he's very persistent. So here's me hurting myself repeatedly for about 3 minutes, just to get a cool reward afterwards, because the poor guy just doesn't know what to do with the fact that we keep throwing ourselves at him. And I find that pretty funny. I didn't even know that there's any reward for it. I just decided to go for as long as there will be a unique dialogue. But hey, that's pretty cool. With that out of the way, it's time to finally talk to the blacksmith, who hasn't seen our shell, but he might upgrade our fork for us. So I'd call it a win in the end. The upgrade ends up only being +5 to attack, which is equivalent to 5 level ups. So that isn't really a lot, because the level ups are just a percentage increase, and I thought we'd get a flat amount, but that's okay. But then continuing through the gutter, we actually find a trash shop, which, well, I guess we all could have seen it coming, but yeah, here's our shell. And Pronafan has it, but he doesn't really want to sell it to us, unless we work for him. But before we get a chance to really negotiate how we'll get our shell back, the trash day starts.
Trash day! It's trash day! Everyone get your baskets! Don't miss out!
Back off! I saw it first!
Get your own trash, lump suckers! What is that thing?
I've never seen anything like it.
It's a message from the captain! It's got his face right on it! It's gotta be!
Excuse me? Excuse me, please. Pardon me. Excuse me, young lady. As New Cassinia's official historian, I'm sure I can shed some light on... My God! If I'm not mistaken, this is part of a map!
Okay, well, the cutscene does go on for quite a bit, but I wanted to show you a bit of the voice acting and stuff, because I think it's quite good. Anyways, the big bad guys show up and they are basically the CEOs of some company, and of course that this is the direction it's going with all the microplastics and stuff. Yeah, basically, for us to get back our shell, we'll need to find the treasure, which obviously the big bad guys want.
Get that treasure there, John, about. I'll gladly trade your shell for it.
For real? You'd really do that?
You bet. A prawn never goes back on his promise.
Aw, yeah! I'm gonna find that treasure!
And with that, we're out of the city. And, well, there are like 50 NPCs to talk to, but I swear, no one says anything interesting. Anyways, just after this long bridge, we will be leaving the safety of the coral reef, and what awaits is a really cool twist that I honestly didn't expect. I'll just let you see it with your own eyes. Oh, and where the random nameless NPCs don't really say anything cool or important, the big main NPCs like the old library museum guy or this lady, yeah, they can have some useful advice. Like this lady, yeah, she warns us about a big danger that can await us if we don't stick to the established route. Let's just stay to the arches, otherwise it might not be so pretty. Oh, look, a shiny. I wonder what that is. Oh, so this is the danger. Please get me out of here. Yeah, remember when I called the game cutesy and cozy? These moments are perfect for subverting your expectations. You honestly expect monsters like that in a gloomy and dark Dark Souls game, or Elden Ring, or anything like that. And in this game, you really don't expect something like this. At least not until this point. It's a first section like that, and the music really works great here as well. Anyways, I'll cut through the chase, because what this section is just sticking as closely to the established route as possible to avoid angering the beast, and getting to the end. But then when we reach the end, we're basically told to make a run for it. So, of course, I'm going to throw myself at the boss and try my luck. Because, well, getting rid of him now is only gonna allow me to explore everything I have to miss. But as you can see, we aren't really a proper match for it. However, if all the Souls games I've played throughout the years taught me anything, is that everything is beatable and it's just a skill issue and you just need to get good instead of crying like a baby. So this is exactly what I did. But if we look at it, we aren't really doing any great damage, if we're doing any at all, and we are using the shell attacks, which usually pack quite a punch, so this really doesn't look promising at all. Yeah, it will take quite a lot of trial and error and actually getting good, so cue the montage. Damn, those were some clean parries. I just wish it didn't take me like 15 more attempts to actually beat him, but that was a promising start, and that gave me faith that it might actually be doable, even given our pathetic damage and survivability. Those are some really strong Sekiro vibes. And there we go. However, that was a really good attempt, which really cannot be said for a lot further ones. It usually goes like that, with the beginner luck on your side, and then you're just getting frustrated and you actually need to get good. Oh yeah, and did I mention he literally has a grab attack that one-shots you, as he literally eats you. Yeah, he does. Okay, I am ready. Bring it on. There we go, finally. And if you're curious what the scroll says, it says to like and subscribe. And with that out of the way, we are free to explore this whole area without having to worry about this giant monster just waiting for a tiny mistake to devour us. So I just went ahead and explored, grabbed all the shinies, which usually is just trash you can sell for microplastics, and a bunch of crystals you can destroy for crystals. But then I also found this little cool hidden area with the big guys. And look, we even got a collectible which increased our maximum health. Yeah, exploration is very much rewarded in this game, which is something I like. Let's just quickly take care of the second elite enemy as well, and then let's move on to the next area that we're actually supposed to be at. And there we are, this corrupted looking underwater forest. I think it's quite cool. It has quite a distinct vibe to it. And once we venture a little bit deeper, we arrive in the expired grove. This area actually reminds me a little bit of Blighttown, with the overwhelming decay everywhere, as well as the archers on the elevated positions. The music is also quite sad and gloomy and not as cheerful as in the lively coral reef. And here we have an elite enemy, but he really isn't that tough. You can also meet him very early in the game, like 10 minutes into starting it, and at this point he actually was quite difficult for me. But as with all Souls-like games, you really get better as you play, so here, he really wasn't an issue at all. Anyway, one of the most common and most defining enemies of this area are those archer crabs, which are put on all elevated areas, and yeah, you just need to find a way to get to them to dispatch them, otherwise dealing with all the ground enemies can be really difficult, because these archers are super accurate and their arrows hurt a lot. Yeah, this area just uses a lot of those archers and puts you in platforming positions where you kind of need to get to them, but you also need to avoid those arrows. And look, they hurt quite a lot even with a tanky shell. And as annoying as it might be, I actually appreciate the varied enemy placement and the combat scenarios you're put in. Oh yeah, and the enemies sometimes just decide to kill themselves, so that saves you a few fork swings. Anyway, let's skip ahead to the boss of this area, and then I'll share a few of my final thoughts during the fight, and we'll just wrap up the video there. Okay, let's go over the strengths and the weaknesses of the game. So, I definitely like the art style and the unique vibe this game has. I also think the enemy variety, at least so far, is quite good. And the enemy placement is not too overbearing, but it's also challenging. I also very much like the unique ideas like the shells which serve as armor. I think the story is fine and the general idea is very funny and relatable with all the microplastics in the oceans, but I think there's a little bit too much of just generic chatter of the basic NPCs, and of course you can just ignore it, and that's what I did. But then again, sometimes less is more. Now, when it comes to the negatives, I don't really have too much to say. I like the fact that there aren't too many checkpoints and that the game prefers to use the shortcuts. And if you're fighting a tough boss, you usually have an invisible checkpoint closer to where you're fighting. One you don't actually activate yourself, and it just works when you die. The game asks you if you want to respawn in that spot. I think I just like more offensive abilities, because you're actually just stuck for the most part with your basic attacks and a heavy attack, which is okay, but then you also only have one weapon, so I wouldn't really mind if we had a few weapons to choose from with different movesets. But it's really fine. I don't think the game is too long, so I don't think I'll have enough time to get bored with it. Plus, you always have the shell abilities as well. So, if you're a fan of the Souls games genre, or you just like a fun but challenging game, but one that isn't as hard as the Souls series, then I think you should give this game a try. So far, it seems like a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 for me. A lot of the heavy lifting is just done with how much heart and passion went into creating that game, and you can tell. As well as the unique vibe of the game, which really hasn't been seen before in the Souls-like genre. Anyways, that would be all. If you'd like to see more or have any questions, then feel free to let me know in a comment. That would be all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I hope to catch you in the next one. Take care!